I just bought this Feather Touch MicroFocuser to use with my 11-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain Telescope. Let's walk through the installation together. The model I purchased is the FTM CPC11 and it's designed for use with my 11-inch Edge HD Schmidt-Cassegrain Telescope. Inside the box you receive two things. The actual microfocuser itself, which I unboxed in a previous video, and also a small brass washer that you'll need for the installation. The purpose of this upgrade is to improve the focusing on your telescope. The telescope came with a single kind of rubberized knob, and I found that to be very tight. What's really nice about these microfocusers is they have two speeds. There's the main coarse focus here, but you'll also see this gold knob here is geared 1 to 10. So every single turn of the large knob results in 10 turns of this smaller knob, allowing you to really dial in your focus on objects. It's very helpful for lunar and planetary observing where you're trying to focus in on super crisp details. I've printed off the instructions on their webpage, and there are 8 steps plus an addendum. They are saying that the only tools that you need are a Phillips head screwdriver and a 1/2-inch wrench. This is a combination wrench. I checked the size of the Phillips head screws beforehand, and this screwdriver is a little bit smaller than the standard that you'd find. This says it's a number 3 Phillips on the back. A larger Phillips head screwdriver may not work as well. Let's get into the installation. Part of the reason I'm doing this upgrade is because I found that the focus control on this telescope was very firm, and I'm hoping that this Feather Touch makes it a little bit smoother and a little bit easier to focus. On my 8-inch Celestron, the focusing was much smoother and I survived many years without having this upgrade. And so I'm really counting on this focuser to go ahead and make this a little bit smoother. Let's go ahead with the first instruction. The instructions say the first step is to simply remove the existing rubber knob, which they say will pull straight off. Let's see if they're telling the truth. This is Trevor from the future, and step 3 is going to have you rotate this brass knob here to bring the mirror back. I'm coming back in time to tell you now that it makes more sense to do this while the rubber knob is still attached. It makes it a little bit easier to turn. It needs quite a bit of force, but it's starting to come off. And there we have it. The rubber cover is removed. Make sure you save any of these extra original parts and set them aside. I found that if I ever go ahead to sell a telescope, that I can usually get more money back by stripping off any of the upgrades and selling them individually rather than leaving them on and selling the telescope with all of them on there. The next instruction is to remove these 3 Phillips head screws on this orange focus knob assembly. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to be very careful to not lose these. And with that, this orange plate simply came off. The third step says to rotate this brass assembly here clockwise to bring the mirror back and expose the threaded portion of the focus shaft. It says at the tip of that, the threaded bolt will be a small Phillips head screw and a washer, and that we need to remove the screw and washer but keep them handy as they'll be reinstalled later. So let's go ahead and turn this until this is visible. There might be a lot of turns in these because I found that these focusers move the mirror quite a bit. For those of you who don't know how focusing in a Schmidt-Cassegrain works, rather than moving the eyepiece back and forth, the mirror at the back here is actually on more or less a set of rails. And when you focus your telescope in a Schmidt-Cassegrain, the mirror actually moves back and forth. And a lot of times they put a huge amount of travel in these. So it's going to take a little while for me to go ahead and get this turned enough to be exposed. Also, these Edge HD models have a focus lock on them, and I did not loosen those all the way. So we'll make sure that that's done. Now you can see that this screw is exposed, and so I'm going to go ahead and remove it. Here's the screw and the washer. The washer appears to maybe be aluminum. The screw is very short thread here. And there's definitely some either grease or some kind of material on here. Step 4 says to rotate the brass portion of the focus shaft counterclockwise now, and this will unthread the entire brass cylinder and bearing assembly from the threaded rod. It notes that you need to remove the parts entirely and that it may take several turns to remove it. And this is a little bit tighter, but let's see how it goes. There's quite a bit of black grease in here, so be careful where you set this aside. Step 5 asks us to remove this threaded stop from the end of the microfocuser. It says that the stop prevents the telescope mirror from falling off the baffle tube inside of the telescope. So, as you can see, I removed this stop, and now it says to thread the stop onto the focus shaft of the telescope. Be sure to thread the stop on far enough that the end of the threaded rod is exposed. And if you look at the pictures here on this, you can see part of this is machined and the other end is not machined. The instructions don't specify, but if you look at the picture, it very clearly shows that the machined side should be towards the telescope. So that's how I'm going to go ahead and thread it on. And step 5 said to make sure that the stop is far enough that the end of the threaded rod is exposed. And that's where I am at this point. So we're going to stop here for a second. I got quite a bit of that black grease on my hand while doing that step, so make sure that you are careful with it and maybe have a paper towel handy to clean up. Now, it doesn't mention this in the instructions at all, but when you're on the website downloading it, there's actually an addendum to the instructions. And if you look at that, it says that after you remove the screw and washer, at step 6, you replace the stock washer with the one that's provided with the new focuser. It came in this bag and it's a little brass, it's a small brass washer. So it doesn't mention that in the actual instructions anywhere. You have to download the addendum and read that. And there's no note in the original instructions at all. So make sure that you follow that. It looks like besides being a different material, this brass one that's provided with the Feather Touch is a little bit thinner. Step 6 is to thread the screw back onto the end of the focus shaft. They don't mention adding the washer back on, but the addendum is very clear that you should be adding that. So I'm going to go ahead and put this washer back on this screw and we will thread it in. Step 7 calls for our 1/2-inch combination wrench. And it says that you are to thread the microfocuser onto the brass stop and hold the stop with a wrench and the black focus knob with the other hand to tighten it to the stop. So that's where those machined portions of this stop are. So I'm actually going to have to move this up a bit. I screwed it in too far. I need to have clearance for my wrench. It said this stop must be tight to secure the microfocuser to the focus shaft. So this sounds like a very critical step. So I'm going to go ahead and hold that with the wrench, and next we will put this on here and thread this on. And it's going very smoothly. It should, I'm not feeling any problems at all. And so I will thread this on. So the instructions were very clear and I didn't read carefully enough. Make sure that when you're threading this on, you're not threading on with this part, but here until it's totally tight. The second half of instruction 7 says to thread the focuser down the threaded rod until the base sits flush with the back of the telescope. If it does not thread all the way down, push it forward to move the position of the primary mirror, allowing the focuser to sit against the back of the telescope. So we're going to go ahead and try that. And this is basically you're doing the focus action here. And so we are going to go ahead and do that, and I can see that it's moving forward. This is going to take a little bit of time. So I've tightened that down. The question is, are the holes for the screws lined up? As you proceed with step 8, make sure that you visually pay attention to where the holes for the screws are before you screw it down all the way. That way, when you go ahead and reattach the screws, you'll have a rough alignment. I didn't pay attention the first time and had to back it off again to check the alignment of the screws. Getting this realigned is probably going to be the hardest step in this entire procedure. It's going to take me a few minutes of fiddling around with it, but once you get the first one, the other two should be relatively easy. I would recommend, once you find the first one, to just get it started and not take it down all the way, and then replace the other two and get them all lined up, and then tighten it down in order. That way we really want to make sure that we're not cross-threading any of these screws or missing the holes. As you can see, I have all three started now, and so I'm going to go ahead and tighten them all down all the way. If you've ever taken a wheel off a car, you know that you're not supposed to tighten one lug nut down all the way before moving on to the next. I'm going to apply that principle here and snug up the three a couple times in rotation, just to make sure that everything is sitting flat and level. I'm being very careful to not strip out these screws and over tighten. The smaller Phillips head shape on here is making it easy for the screwdriver to slip out, so use caution. You don't want to have to replace these. And that was it. Let's give it a try. I can already tell that the focusing motion is much smoother and less resistant than it was before. This is the Cadillac of focusers, and it feels wonderful on here. I'm really eager to get out and do some planetary observing and try this 1 to 10 focal reducer. I'm used to this on some of my other telescopes, but never on a Schmidt-Cassegrain, and I think it'll be a great upgrade. Note that when this is done, your focus is going to be way off, and so it may take you a few minutes to adjust your focus when you take this out under the stars for the first time after completing this project. As long as you have those two tools, this job should be simple enough for anybody to accomplish, and I would encourage you to go ahead and give it a try for yourself. This is a great upgrade, and it can really make for a smoother observing experience. I hope you found this instructional video useful. This is Trevor from Night Sky Voyager, signing off.